In the PMBOK guide, like I said, there are 12 processes for the monitoring and controlling process group. So let's dive in. First process in the monitoring and controlling process group is called monitor and control project work. What exactly are we doing in monitor and control project work? It says monitoring and controlling the entire project and creating work performance reports. Now, while that's cool, before you exam, what you want to do is open up the mothership. I tell people, don't cut corners. Open up the book and let's read what our friends at headquarters have put together for us. For every process in the PMBOK guide, there is that special page where each process is decomposed in detail. I'm not sure how much of the anatomy of the PMBOK guide you have been into, but there is an anatomy to the PMBOK guide. You see, every process has its own special description in its own special section. This one is 4.5. So there's 4.1 to 4.7, there's 5.1 to 5.6, there's 6.1 to 6.6. There's 7.1 to 7.4. You see, so each one has its own unique address and location in the book. This one is on page 105 and it states, monitor and control project work is the process of tracking, reviewing, and reporting the overall progress to meet the performance objectives defined in the project management plan. The key benefits of this process are that it allows stakeholders to understand the current state of the project, to recognize the actions taken to address any performance issues, and to have visibility into the future project status with cost and schedule forecast. Now, someone might say, but why are they mentioning cost and schedule forecast? After all, we're here in integration, and that stuff happens elsewhere. That's true. However, this process is where a lot of information is assembled. A lot of information is put into a report, compiled, formatted in a way that whoever's reading it, whoever's a stakeholder, can really understand it. So this is the reporting process in my mind. This is where you let stakeholders get what they need through you crafting the report. You know what your stakeholder wants, craft it into the report. And then this report travels to the managed communications process, which is in executing. You see how they all interrelate? You're doing your reporting in monitor and control project work. This work performance report becomes an input to a bunch of places, but the most important one is managed communications. Because in managed communications, the work performance report that you generate from this process is going to be transmitted. It's going to be sent across. Whichever medium, however you've decided to do it, in managed communications, that work performance report gets distributed. And it goes to a bunch of other places. So I've talked about each process having its own unique address, 4.5, 6.2, 10.1, 11.7, they all have their unique locations. So you got to read those places where the PMI have described this process does this, and the key benefits of this are, you want to read all those ones, okay? In fact, some students, they say, okay, all I'm going to do is take a picture of this and read that, and I'm going to shorten what I need to do. I don't know, what can I say? Some folks are in crunch time. They woke up 2 days to the exam. Maybe that's an approach. But if you've got enough time, folks, I would say seriously, spend time digging into each process, mining the gold, and making sure you truly understand what is the process and what are the benefits of it. Now, what I've tried to do in all of these slides is I've tried to cut to the chase. I know some folks might see this and think, oh, it's too short. No, I've gone into a lot of details to extract the one or two sentences, so that for those people that are in crunch time, that have, I've only got a couple of days, I've got it tomorrow. Hey, if they watch what I've presented, they could benefit from the key things. Did you see how I zoned into the word report on my slide? Because that is the major essence of this process. You're taking a bunch of things, information, outputs, cost forecasts, schedule forecasts, and then you're wrapping them up into a report that your management can read and glean immediately what they need to. All right, so that's monitor and control project work. And like I said, you want to read that for every process. Now, the next thing, talking about the anatomy of the guide, next thing to be aware of as you read the guide, you want to take a look at the pages where you've got those data flows. Like I'm looking at page 106. My oh my, it's got quite a lot of information. For those, you need to blow them up, you need to slow down, and you need to find the unique outputs and any unique inputs, because this does not have tools and techniques. It only has the inputs and the outputs. So I want to encourage you folks, read the definitions for every process and study the data flows. It can really help you, okay? Now, every process also has its own ITTO table. You already knew that. I'm not talking about the big old tables in 4-1, 5-1, 6-1, figure 7-1, figure 8-1, figure 9-1. No. I'm not talking about those. I'm talking about those that come immediately after that description. So you've got a breakdown of what the process is, and you've got a table. In this case of monitor and control project work, I'm looking at figure 4-10. So figure 4-10 has a unique table of IDTOs for that process. That's something else you want to hone in on, okay? So the description of the process, the data flow, that unique table, and also the ones I just mentioned for the knowledge areas, figure 4-1, figure 5-1, figure 6-1, all the way to 14-1. Oh, I'm being a bit ambitious, sorry. 13-1. There's no chapter 14 in the PMBOK guide. The unspoken 14th chapter is actually the Code of Ethics. But anyway, get all that stuff and read it and study it. One of my students, Shruti, out of Virginia, she decided to print out all of these data flows and mow them down before her exam. You know the outcome? 4 above targets. Phenomenal. You put in the time and the effort and the work, I tell you, it does pay off. It really does. All right, folks, so that is monitor and control project work. And last but not least, when all of that stuff is done and you've read, you flip the pages over, you're falling asleep, trying to get the guide through your system, don't forget to study the glossary. The glossary is a very helpful tool, especially for people who are in crunch time. You know why? Because you'll come across some words that you never knew existed. One of my students said, Phil, what on earth is hammock activity? I've never even seen the word until I open up the PMBOK Glossary. And I'm talking about editions before this one. I'm not sure if hammock activity is in this one anymore. But all of that to say, the glossary has a lot of content and stuff you should read. If you've got a copy of the PMI Lexicon of Terms, also another good one to study. So I know I'm talking a lot about non-process stuff, but if you get this stuff down, you read it, you hone in on it, you study it, you know it, you're going to be better for it, okay? So I know we're on monitor and control project work. I'm not taking you on a rabbit trail. I'm just sharing some gold with you that you can use. All right. Next process here is perform integrated change control. This is all about reviewing and approving or rejecting project change requests. So we've got a body of people known as the CCB, And on a lot of projects, we've got a change control board. But don't forget, on your exam, if you are the advanced student who has read all this stuff, I hope you noticed a particular page in the guide where it was mentioned. In certain instances, there does not exist a CCB. Did you read that? Did you find that in the guide? That there could only exist, in some instances, a project manager and a sponsor. I'm not sure if you read that, but that is quite an interesting read. I'm going to try and point out that page to you. It's quite an interesting read. So, there's a lot to be read on page 115, folks. Quite a lot of information. My goodness, I wish I could go into all of this stuff with you. But it says every documented change request, this is in the middle of page 115, every documented change request needs to be either approved, deferred, or rejected by the CCB. No, it doesn't say CCB. It says by a responsible individual. Usually the project sponsor or project manager. The responsible individual will be identified in the project management plan or by organizational procedures, standard operating procedures, and so on. When required, perform integrated change control process includes a change control board, which is a formally chartered group responsible for reviewing, evaluating, approving, deferring, or rejecting changes to the project and for recording and communicating such decisions. And then it says approved change requests can require new or revised cost estimates. Activity sequences, basically it could be a big pain to make a change. But I read that to show you guys on your exam, don't get into the tunnel vision of CCB, 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 CCB. You could get a question where it alludes to that individual responsible for the rejection or approval of change requests. It may not mention anything about a CCB. And you're going to be wondering, should I choose option A because it says project manager? Hey, read the question, understand the logic, understand the dynamics, and go with your gut. Go with what you feel in your gut is the right answer. And don't change your answer. A lot of people change answers on the exam. You don't want to do that. All right. Next one here is validate scope. This is where the customer or key stakeholders validate that the deliverables meet their requirements through deliverable inspection. So you see the magnifying glass, you want to inspect the house, the deliverable, whatever it is, you want to inspect it. Now from this process, we get something known as accepted deliverables. So right now, this deliverable that is being put under the magnifying glass could be referred to as a verified deliverable. It's been verified by the builder. The builder says it's good, everything's working, go inspect it. Now the customer or the sponsor or whatever stakeholder is inspecting is now going to take that verified deliverable, put it under the microscope and do their inspection. All right, so there are a number of processes that are linked in this chain, and if you haven't watched it, I want to advise you to go watch my video on YouTube. It's called the PMBOK Guide Mainline. Just search for it and watch it. It will save you a ton of time. It's right here on YouTube. You don't want to watch the one for the 5th edition. The one you want is the 6th edition video. They're very similar, but in the 6th edition video, I go a lot further in breaking down a lot of this information for you. So the way it works is you have deliverables from direct and managed project work. That's like saying the builder has built the house, okay? After the builder has built the house, what happens? Does the builder say, customer, come check the house out? Or does the builder do an internal check? Or maybe all throughout the project, the builder is actually doing an internal check of various components. We call that control quality. Control quality is internal to the project. But this process that we are reviewing now is called validate scope. Validate scope is external to the project, in that we're dealing with a customer, a stakeholder, someone that the project is for, not someone working on the project. So that's validate scope. Next process here is control scope. This is where you ensure that scope is not enlarged without going through the proper protocol. You make sure people are not adding extras to your project. You make sure they're behaving. You make sure people are doing what they said they would. And ultimately, you are preventing scope creep. You're preventing scope from creeping up on you. You're preventing gold plating. People who are eager beavers to add extras. You ever had a team member that's an eager beaver, maybe suffering from the Superman syndrome, just wanting to get extra brownie points and doing too much? In the world of the PMI, if that dump truck shows up with pebbles or rocks or gravel or whatever it is, and it is not 100% what you said it would be in the contract, you don't accept it. A lot of people are puzzled at that famous question. You're a project manager on a project, you're in crunch time. Dump truck turns up and it's not what exactly you asked for, but it would do the job. Doesn't meet the exact technical specification, but it can get the job done. You're running late, what should you do? Don't accept it, all right? So we think about stuff like that when it comes to control scope. Did we just allow scope creep? Did we follow the right protocol for changing any part of the project, be it product scope, project scope, material, technical characteristics, whatever it is? We always want to follow the plan, stick to the plan. All right, now moving on to scheduling. We have control schedule. This is where you're controlling the schedule by preventing delays and analyzing the impact of changes on the schedule. Next one here is control cost. This is where you are controlling cost by preventing cost overruns. It's like having your shopping list and going to the supermarket, going to the store. What did you budget? Oh, I budgeted to spend $500. Are you going to spend $500 right now? Hey, you're about to go over, don't do it. And then you take a look back and you say, yeah, I probably shouldn't do it. I mean, that's what you do on the project. Only that you, the project manager, may be involved in policing people who are fond of spending too much. You know, a company I worked in, there was this character who would want to go to lunch on the project budget. And he would take that credit card and abuse the credit card by going to lunch with everyone under the sun. Anyone who came for an interview was immediately treated to lunch. And then eventually the boss decided, hey, you can't keep doing this. It seems like you're the person who needs the lunch, not the person being interviewed. But anyway, side story. But we see that on a lot of projects. It may not be the lunch, but someone spending what they shouldn't on something else. Next process here is control quality. This is where we're inspecting the final deliverable internally. Remember, I talked about doing your internal check. Well, this is where you would do it. And this is where you ensure that the product, service, or result is fit for use, conforms to the requirements before sending it to your customer. The next process is from resources here, and it's called control resources. Control resources actually is where we are controlling how resources are being used. So that should actually read something to the effect of controlling resource usage on the project. Now, we're not talking about the humans, but we're more concerned with the physical resources, the materials, the supplies, the facilities, and what have you. Next process here is monitor communications. And in monitor communications, this is where we are modifying any communications plan aspects that are not working. In other words, you're checking to make sure that indeed your communications management plan is working. And if it's not working, you need to modify something that will make it better for your team. Next one here is monitor risks. So I was very careful in the beginning to tell you, hey, we don't control risks. Well, this is exemplified in the monitor risks process. So in monitor risks, this is where we keep track of our risks and we check the effectiveness of our risk response plans. The final one in the controlling process group is known as control procurement. And in control procurement, this is where we are changing any ineffective procurement plan aspects. This is where we ensure that the vendor is giving us what we asked for, or the subcontractor is giving us what we asked for. And ultimately, this is where we close out each procurement, each contract. Last but not least, we've got monitor stakeholder engagement. It's funny, those of us who have been through tons of PMBOK guide editions, whenever we get to chapter 12, we sometimes think it's over, but it's not over. We got chapter 13. Who knows, maybe they'll add a chapter 14 one of these days. But anyway, monitor stakeholder engagement. This is where we're checking the plan for how to manage stakeholders, and we modify the plan as needed. We're trying to ensure that this plan is really meeting our stakeholders' needs. There's a difference between managing stakeholder engagement versus monitoring stakeholder engagement. Manage stakeholder engagement is working the plan. Monitor stakeholder engagement is checking the plan. And that brings us to the end of our processes in the monitoring and controlling process group. If you have any questions whatsoever, don't hesitate to send them to the address I showed at the beginning, info@praizion.com, or right here on YouTube. If you have any questions, do not hesitate to ask those questions. Thank you very much for your audience, and I wish you all the best on the PMP exam.